The rain hit the streets of Atlanta with relentless intensity, turning them into rivers that reflected the city lights like molten glass. Every drop seemed to tap against Amara's delivery bag as she ran across the plaza, weaving through streams of water pooling near the skyscrapers of downtown. The storm drenched her from head to toe, plastering her dark hair to her face, but she barely noticed. All that mattered was the small cooler bag in her hands, the lifeline to her mother's survival. "I translate that as medicine for my mother," Amara said firmly to herself, gripping the strap of the bag until her knuckles whitened. The words carried weight far beyond their literal meaning. They were a mantra, a declaration of purpose. She had spent nearly 2 decades of her young life preparing for moments she couldn't have foreseen, but never for this, standing in the headquarters of Pinnacle Global, a company that ruled the tech and finance world, facing the full fury of corporate chaos. The executive floor of Pinnacle Global was a war zone. Giant screens lined the walls, each one flashing bright red error codes. The glow from the monitors painted the glass and steel room in a hellish crimson, as executives yelled into phones, voices cracking with frustration. One could almost taste the panic. Veronica Hale, CEO and founder of Pinnacle, stood at the center of the storm. At 48, she was the embodiment of precision and ruthlessness, with eyes the cold gray of steel and a presence that could command an army. Her sharp suit and perfectly coiffed hair were as intimidating as the empire she had built. An empire forged on intelligence, strategy, and a little cruelty. Now that empire teetered on the brink, threatened by something she would never have imagined. A single catastrophic mistranslation in a Japanese contract worth $60 million. "Can someone explain how this happened?" Veronica demanded, voice slicing through the room like a knife. The IT director, a young man in a too large suit, shuffled papers nervously and typed furiously on a laptop. "Ma'am, the AI translation system, it misinterpreted formal Japanese terms." "It misinterpreted?" Veronica's laugh was short and cruel. "Our $1 million AI misinterpreted. That's supposed to be the world's most advanced translation software. And it cost us $60 million in a single afternoon." Her executives flinched as she spun on her heel, gray eyes flashing. "I want answers. I want solutions. I want this fixed now." Amara had never seen anything like this from the outside looking in. She had delivered to skyscrapers before, to law offices and tech firms, but nothing prepared her for the sheer chaos of Pinnacle Global's executive floor. The moment she entered, her eyes were drawn to the screens, the red error codes, and most importantly, the Japanese characters that had caused the uproar. Her heart beat faster as she realized what had happened. She had studied formal Japanese extensively with her father, Miguel Okafor, a former Nigerian diplomat who had served in Asia for nearly 15 years. Miguel had spent countless nights teaching Amara to navigate subtle cultural and linguistic nuances that even some professionals missed. And now, a single overlooked detail in translation had nearly destroyed one of the largest contracts Pinnacle had ever attempted. Amara took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, her voice calm despite the storm raging outside and inside the building. "I think I can help." Veronica froze mid-gesture, gray eyes narrowing as she appraised the soaked girl in a damp uniform. "You? A delivery girl?" she asked, incredulous. "Do you honestly believe you can solve a problem that my team of Harvard-trained PhD translators couldn't?" Amara's hands tightened around the cooler strap. "Your system translated Kaizen as submission when it should have been mutual improvement. That's why your clients are offended. I can correct it." The executives around the room erupted in laughter, pointing and whispering. "A delivery girl, telling us how to do international business," one muttered, barely holding back a snicker. Another executive whispered to his colleague, Maybe she'll just cry in the corner. It'd be more believable than this. Veronica's lips curled into a smirk. This is the entertainment I've been waiting for, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Amara, if you can solve this in an hour, I'll pay you $3,000. Fail, and you leave humiliated in front of everyone here. Deal? Amara's eyes hardened. $3,000 will cover my mother's medicine for this month, she replied without hesitation. I accept. The room exploded with laughter again. $3,000 for a delivery girl to fix what Pinnacle's $1 million system couldn't? Even Veronica allowed herself a short, surprised chuckle, though the amusement didn't last. There was something different in Amara's gaze. A quiet, simmering determination, the kind of resolve born from necessity. No one in the room knew Amara's secret. She wasn't just any delivery girl. Her father, Miguel Okafor, had taught her far more than language. He had taught her to read contracts, to notice when numbers didn't add up, when cultural subtleties were ignored, and when arrogance threatened diplomacy. She had grown up translating documents at the dinner table while other children watched cartoons. She had absorbed lessons in business etiquette, formal Japanese, and negotiation that many seasoned executives still struggled to understand. Amara sat at the corner workstation, hands poised over the keyboard. Her fingers moved with a grace and precision that made even the IT director pause. Every keystroke was deliberate. Every line she typed reconstructed not only the translation but the contract's entire structure. Veronica watched, initially amused, but slowly her confidence began to falter as she noticed the pattern. The girl wasn't just competent. She was exceptional. Time out, Veronica shouted 20 minutes into the task. Enough of this charade. Call security. Amara didn't look up. I still have 40 minutes, and I've just discovered why you lost 3 other contracts this year, she said calmly. The executives went silent. Veronica's face flushed with irritation. Explain, she snapped. Amara's voice was steady. Your AI system cannot distinguish levels of respect in business Japanese. You've been treating CEOs as equals, rather than observing formal hierarchies. It's like greeting a judge by calling them buddy. Those mistakes have cost you millions in contracts and credibility. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Amara had touched a nerve. She saved the file, her movements deliberate. My father spent 15 years negotiating cultural agreements across Asia. I grew up learning these subtleties at the dinner table. In international business, even a single comma can cost millions. Amara opened a new window and pulled up Pinnacle's financial records, showing nearly $92 million in losses over the past 2 years caused by translation errors and ignored warnings. Executives who had mocked her moments before could not look away. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared from Hiro Tanaka, CEO of Sakura Technologies, the very company Pinnacle was negotiating with. I heard about your issue. Miguel Okafor helped me years ago. I can assist. Amara's heart raced. Miguel Okafor had been her father. Hiro Tanaka had been his mentor. Now, the connections he had cultivated years ago were coming full circle. Amara typed rapidly, sending the corrected contract to Tanaka along with a note. I am Miguel Okafor's daughter, honoring his unfinished work. The room's phone rang immediately. It was Hiro Tanaka. Exceptional work, he said. I want to speak with the person responsible for this translation. The conversation revealed Pinnacle's negligence and the history of ignored warnings. Veronica's composure cracked as Amara's meticulous work exposed both corporate mismanagement and the full scope of their $92 million losses. Tanaka offered Amara the position of Director of International Communications, with a $220,000 annual salary and full medical benefits for her family. The girl who had arrived soaked and mocked now held the power to secure her mother's health, restore her father's legacy, and change the future of an international corporation. Amara turned to Veronica, her voice calm but firm. "You may keep the $3,000 you promised. I have work that truly matters." The storm outside had begun to abate, but inside Pinnacle, the fallout of arrogance and underestimation left a silence heavier than the rain. Amara, a delivery girl moments ago, had become a symbol of justice, intelligence, and moral triumph. She had proven that talent, perseverance, and love could overturn even the most entrenched power structures. As she gathered her things and prepared for her new role, she thought of her mother waiting for her medication at home and of her father's teachings, now fully honored. The story of humiliation, determination, and eventual triumph was only beginning, and the world was about to take notice. Rain still clung to the streets of Atlanta, winding its way through narrow alleys and open avenues, reflecting the neon lights of the city. Yet, inside a modest apartment in the Southwest District, the storm was nothing compared to the one Amara had faced in her life. Her mother, Lila Okafor, a petite black woman with kind eyes that had seen far too much suffering, was sitting at the kitchen table, rifling through a pile of bills. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from age or weakness, but from the weight of responsibility that had never truly left her. Each statement reminded her of the precarious tightrope they had walked since Miguel's passing 6 years ago. Amara had been there, as always, quietly listening from the doorway, arms crossed over her soaked delivery bag. She watched her mother's lips press together as she calculated how to stretch the few dollars left in their account. She didn't speak. Words had never been enough for their struggles. Instead, she had learned early that action spoke louder than promises. Miguel Okafor had been more than a father. He had been a diplomat, a linguist, and a relentless teacher who had refused to let Amara accept mediocrity. In their small living room, evening after evening, he had spread out contracts, letters, and corporate agreements from his work in Asia. "Amara," he would say, pointing at the kanji on a page, "language is never just language. A word carries intention, culture, and expectation. Miss it, and you may lose more than money, you may lose trust, reputation, even relationships." She had watched him navigate meetings in foreign countries via phone and video conferences, interpreting not just words but moods, silences, and gestures. Miguel had taught her that translation was an art form, one that combined intellect, intuition, and empathy. When he passed suddenly from an aggressive illness, Amara had felt the world shift beneath her feet. At 15, she had learned the cruel truth that brilliance and preparation meant little if no one recognized your worth. Miguel's absence was a void that had forced her to grow up too quickly. Lila had worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, from late-night cleaning shifts to administrative work at a small law firm. But healthcare in America was unrelenting. Miguel's death had left a financial hole too deep for their modest savings. Amara, witnessing the strain on her mother, made a choice. "I'll help," she had said softly, barely 13, stacking boxes at a local market. "I'll do whatever it takes." From that moment, her life became a delicate balance. School, work, and studying languages, translation techniques, and business negotiation. She delivered food for hours, often in pouring rain, sometimes late into the night, to pay for her mother's medication and to save whatever was left for college. Even as she carried out these tasks, she never lost sight of the lessons her father had imparted. Every delivery, every translation, every interaction with clients and strangers was a classroom. Every challenge was a test. Few knew of Amara's unusual expertise. At 18, she was fluent in English, Japanese, and Yoruba, with conversational abilities in Mandarin and Spanish. More importantly, she had an intuitive grasp of diplomacy. She could detect discrepancies in contracts, subtle shifts in tone, and hidden assumptions that most adults overlooked. Her father had given her a notebook filled with his insights, tricks for negotiating with respect and precision, and case studies from his career. She kept it tucked in her backpack at all times. It was her guide, her compass, and, sometimes, her only comfort. When she arrived at Pinnacle Global that rainy day, all of that training coalesced. Her heart beat fast, but her hands and mind were steady. Years of struggle had given her a confidence that was quiet, yet unshakable. While Amara had grown up under struggle and loss, Veronica Hale had been raised under pressure of a different kind. Privilege, expectation, and constant scrutiny. Born into wealth, she had been taught that power, sharpness, and ruthlessness were necessary for survival. By the age of 30, she had clawed her way to the top of Pinnacle Global, leaving behind mentors, competitors, and friends who doubted her. She had created a company that dominated markets, yet she had a blind spot, the human element. Where Amara had empathy, Veronica had efficiency. Where Amara had intuition, Veronica had process. When the AI translation system failed, it wasn't just a financial disaster, it was a personal affront. Her reputation, carefully constructed over decades, was at stake. She didn't see Amara at first as a human being with skill. She saw her as a challenge to her authority. The room was still tense. Amara's fingers danced across the keyboard, reconstructing the translation, cross-referencing cultural norms, and adjusting each sentence to reflect formal Japanese hierarchy. Veronica paced behind her, silent at first, then muttering to herself. Executives exchanged anxious glances, unsure whether to laugh or panic. The young girl in a damp uniform was changing the balance of power in the room, line by line. Amara paused for a moment to think. She knew there was more at stake than just this contract. If she failed, her mother wouldn't get her medication. If she succeeded, she could save her mother, honor her father's legacy, and demonstrate that intelligence and talent could thrive outside privilege. Her eyes scanned the financial history, missed contracts, lost profits, repeated mistakes. It was worse than she had imagined. Pinnacle had ignored warnings from her father, thinking experience and pedigree were more valuable than insight and skill. She felt a quiet surge of determination. Suddenly, her phone vibrated again. Another message from Hiro Tanaka. "Are you sure this is the right time? Pinnacle is notorious for rejecting independent advice. I can intervene if needed." Amara smiled faintly. She typed back, "This is the right time. Watch closely." Her plan was not just to correct the translation, but to reveal Pinnacle's history of negligence, exposing the $92 million in losses, and to prove her father's insight had been ignored for far too long. Veronica, oblivious to this digital exchange, continued to glare over her shoulder. She did not yet realize that this was not a simple translation problem. This was a reckoning. For the next 20 minutes, Amara worked in silence. The only sounds were the clicking of her keyboard and the occasional beep of the monitors. Outside, rain streaked the windows. Inside, tension thickened the air. One executive whispered, "She's doing more than just translating. Look at those cross-references. She's auditing our past mistakes." Veronica's smirk faltered. "Don't be ridiculous. A delivery girl can't audit a billion-dollar company's errors," she said, though doubt crept into her tone. Amara's screen began to populate with evidence. Emails, rejected proposals, internal reports. Every mistake Pinnacle had made was traced back to the very cultural misunderstandings her father had warned about. At that moment, Amara leaned back slightly, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had a plan for the final move, a message that would tie everything together. The corrected contract, the financial evidence, and a personal note connecting her to Miguel Okafor. She typed quickly, "Mr. Tanaka, this is Amara Okafor. My father, Miguel Okafor, assisted you years ago. I am sending the corrected contract and a full account of Pinnacle's mishandling of prior recommendations. This work honors my father's legacy." The room fell silent. The air seemed to press down on Veronica Hale, whose confidence had begun to crack. For the first time, she understood the depth of the girl's knowledge, and for the first time she felt fear. Not just of losing a contract, but of losing face in front of the global community. The first wave of emails and reports was sent. Amara's plan was in motion. She leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Outside, the rain began to taper. Inside, history was about to change. She had honored her father. She had protected her mother. And she had reminded the world that brilliance does not always come in expected packages. The room had shifted from chaos to an uneasy silence. Every eye in Pinnacle Global's executive floor was on Amara, the damp 18-year-old delivery girl who had just begun exposing decades of arrogance and oversight. The red glare of the monitors now seemed almost tame compared to the storm Amara had unleashed in the minds of the executives. Amara's fingers moved with precision across the keyboard. She wasn't just fixing a translation error. She was reconstructing a multi-layered contract, integrating Japanese business customs, corporate hierarchy, and subtle phrasing to reflect respect and mutual understanding. Each adjustment was deliberate, each correction backed by the knowledge she had absorbed from her father's teachings.
Hiro Tanaka's intervention.
Her phone buzzed again. It was Hiro Tanaka, the CEO of Sakura Technologies. Amara's heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from the responsibility she carried. Amara, I've received preliminary updates. The errors Pinnacle made are astonishing. Are you confident in your corrections? Amara typed quickly. Yes, sir. I am sending the corrected contract along with a detailed report showing the losses caused by prior mistranslations. My father, Miguel Okafor, had previously identified these issues, but Pinnacle ignored his warnings. This work honors his legacy. Within seconds, the response came. Understood. Proceed. I will review and confirm. Your father's work was exemplary, and I have no doubt yours will be as well. Amara's hands did not falter. She opened a secure window and began sending the corrected contract and financial records. The system she accessed was sophisticated but poorly monitored. It was almost ironic that the company's own hubris had allowed her to uncover the $92 million in cumulative losses. A vice president leaned over a colleague's shoulder, whispering, "Does she really understand all of this? She's analyzing losses, evaluating hierarchy in Japanese business, and auditing prior contracts, all in real time." The IT director, still pale from the initial chaos, muttered, "How does a delivery girl have access to our secure systems?" Amara didn't answer. She focused entirely on her work. Years of experience translating contracts with her father had conditioned her to stay calm under pressure. Each click, each keystroke, was a testament to discipline, skill, and necessity. Veronica Hale, pacing behind her, stopped mid-step. "Enough!" she barked. "How is she doing this? This isn't possible." Her confidence was cracking. The initial amusement had long evaporated, replaced by a creeping realization that she had underestimated the power of preparation, resilience, and intelligence born from necessity rather than privilege. Amara opened the internal financial archives. She began projecting the data onto the large screens, showing Pinnacle's losses, rejected proposals, canceled deals, and the cascading effects of mismanaged translations. $92 million. 2 years. Each figure corresponded exactly to a mistranslation or ignored recommendation her father had made. Veronica's face went pale. "Stop," she hissed. This is confidential." Amara's voice remained calm. "Exactly, ma'am. Confidentiality does not excuse negligence. Each of these losses could have been prevented had Pinnacle recognized the value of Miguel Okafor's work. And now you are witnessing the consequences." The executives shifted uncomfortably. The young girl who had once been the object of their mockery had just become a mirror, reflecting the arrogance and oversight that had cost them millions. Amara had anticipated resistance. She had also anticipated Veronica's reaction. Using a secondary device, she discreetly prepared a secure summary for Hiro Tanaka, who had authority to escalate matters internationally. Within moments, Tanaka confirmed receipt and added, "Amara, your report is precise. Sakura Technologies is reviewing Pinnacle's performance. You have the floor." The executives realized the magnitude of the situation. The financial and translation errors were no longer internal. They were now visible to the partner company,
and their CEO was in direct contact with the person who had uncovered the entire scandal. Veronica's hands trembled slightly. "This is insane," she muttered, pacing back and forth. "She's not just translating. She's auditing, exposing, and negotiating." At 18, Amara's calm was unsettling. She didn't rush. She had learned from her father that patience and clarity often outweighed speed and bluster. Every word in the contract, every line of the report was deliberate. She added personal annotations explaining the cultural nuances of business Japanese, highlighting the difference between casual and formal honorifics, and detailing why certain phrasing could offend or reassure a client. She paused and whispered under her breath, "This is more than medicine for my mother. This is justice for my father, too." Her phone buzzed again. Tanaka was on the line. "Amara, the corrected contract is outstanding. I want to speak with you directly before responding to Pinnacle. Your father's recommendations from years ago were ignored, and now you have proven their accuracy." Amara answered, her voice steady. "Thank you, sir. I've included a full record of Pinnacle's mistakes, along with recommendations for future compliance and cross-cultural review." Tanaka's voice softened. "Your father would be proud. I can see he trained you well. Pinnacle may have ignored his work, but you have restored it. I will personally review your report and confirm the contract." Amara's heart raced, not from fear, but from responsibility. The final step required precision. The corrected contract had to be accepted and verified, and Pinnacle's executives had to witness the impact of their negligence. Veronica's composure was unraveling. She turned to her executive team, voice rising. How did she access our internal systems? How did she uncover this much data? This isn't possible. The executives could only stare, frozen. Some whispered to each other, "This girl knows more than we do. She's auditing the company." Veronica, realizing her authority was slipping, tried one last gambit. "Amara, this is corporate property. You cannot." Amara interrupted without looking up. "I was authorized when you gave me access to the translation system. Diplomatic translators must verify authenticity. That includes the financial and contractual data linked to those translations." The room was silent. Veronica's usual fire was replaced by disbelief. She had been outmaneuvered by a teenager who, minutes ago, she had dismissed as insignificant. Amara clicked, "Send" one final time. The corrected contract, full financial report, and personal note were delivered securely to Hiro Tanaka. Within moments, Tanaka confirmed receipt. "Amara, the contract is perfect. I want to proceed. Pinnacle's errors have been documented, and we will be taking immediate action. I will speak to you shortly regarding your position." Amara's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second. She allowed herself a small, victorious smile. Years of work, sacrifice, and study had converged in this single moment. Veronica stood frozen, realizing that her empire and her reputation had been exposed and outmaneuvered by someone she had considered beneath her notice. The rain outside Atlanta had slowed, leaving streets glistening in the fading evening light. Inside Pinnacle, the storm had ended, leaving a silence thicker than the heaviest downpour. Amara had transformed from delivery girl to a symbol of justice, skill, and resilience. She had honored her father, protected her mother, and reminded the world that talent can thrive outside privilege. Veronica Hale, once untouchable, now faced the consequences of arrogance, her confidence shattered. The executives, once mocking, could only watch as the young girl had rewritten the rules of their corporate battlefield. Amara gathered her cooler bag, her heart lighter, knowing that her next steps would secure her family's future and her father's legacy. She had won the battle, but the story was far from over. The first light of dawn filtered through the glass windows of Pinnacle Global's executive tower. The city of Atlanta, once obscured by relentless rain, now gleamed in pale sunlight. Inside, the aftermath of the previous night's events was palpable. The executives remained frozen, some seated, some standing, their faces etched with disbelief. None dared speak first. Amara Okafor, still in her damp delivery uniform from the storm, moved quietly toward the elevator, her cooler bag in hand. The weight of responsibility had lifted slightly. The contract was corrected, Pinnacle's negligence exposed, and her mother's medicine secured. She paused for a moment, looking back at Veronica Hale. The woman's gray eyes were no longer sharp with cruelty. They were uncertain, humbled, and for the first time human. Veronica had spent the night reviewing the leaked internal data, the detailed financial reports, and the corrected contract Amara had sent to Hiro Tanaka. Her empire, built on precision, privilege, and control, had been laid bare by someone she had dismissed. Hours of self-reflection followed. Veronica realized that her greatest strength, her ruthlessness, had also been her greatest weakness. She had failed to recognize talent that did not come with an elite pedigree. She had underestimated courage born from necessity. And now, she faced the consequences. Pinnacle Global's credibility had been severely damaged, and her personal reputation was irreparably compromised. It was in this moment of humility that Veronica understood a hard truth. The world does not reward arrogance. It rewards competence, diligence, and integrity, qualities she had once overlooked in others, and now had witnessed firsthand in Amara. Hiro Tanaka's voice came over the secure line shortly afterward. Amara, your work is exceptional. Your father's legacy is honored, and the contract is now fully restored. I would like to offer you the position of Director of International Communications at Sakura Technologies in Atlanta, a starting salary of $220,000 per year, with full medical coverage for your family. Amara's heart swelled with emotion. I gladly accept, sir, she replied. My father would be proud. Tanaka paused. And I must say, Amara, your approach has not only corrected a financial disaster but also restored dignity to your family's name. Your father's teachings live on in you. At last, the young woman who had once delivered meals through storms now commanded the attention of one of the world's most influential technology leaders. News of Pinnacle's internal failures quickly spread. Bloomberg and other major financial outlets reported on the $92 million in losses, the ignored recommendations of Miguel Okafor, and the audacious young woman who had outmaneuvered a corporate titan. Veronica Hale faced a reckoning with the board. Though her title and compensation had been shaken, she had a choice: remain bitter or learn from the experience. For the first time, she chose humility. She requested a meeting with Amara, not as a CEO to an employee, but as one professional to another, seeking guidance and mentorship in understanding the human element she had long ignored. Amara agreed. We'll start with translation protocols, she said calmly. But you'll also learn why competence cannot be judged by appearances. 6 months later, Amara returned to her old neighborhood in southwest Atlanta, this time not to deliver food, but to inaugurate the Miguel Okafor Fund, a foundation dedicated to providing scholarships and mentorship for underprivileged youth interested in translation, diplomacy, and international relations. At the ceremony, Lila Okafor, her mother, watched with tears in her eyes. You've done it, Amara. You've honored your father, helped yourself, and helped countless others. Amara smiled, glancing at the framed photo of her father on the podium. He always said the most powerful words are those that connect worlds, not just languages. Today, I am proving he was right. The crowd erupted in applause. The same city that had once overlooked her potential now celebrated her brilliance, resilience, and heart. Veronica Hale appeared quietly at the back of the auditorium, taking notes and observing. She had since resigned from Pinnacle, spending months reflecting on leadership, empathy, and the consequences of neglecting talent. Amara approached her afterward. I've prepared a role for you, she said. Junior assistant in our corporate ethics department. It's modest, but you'll learn the value of humility and diligence from the ground up. Veronica's eyes widened. I accept, she said earnestly. I want to learn. Thank you, Amara, for showing me the path I should have taken decades ago. Soon, Amara received invitations from top universities and multinational corporations. Northwestern University requested her to lecture on intercultural communication, and Honda and Sony offered her leadership roles in their America's expansion, with salaries exceeding $500,000 plus profit sharing. Amara, ever thoughtful, accepted only select positions that aligned with her father's vision, promoting opportunity, justice, and the transformative power of knowledge over privilege. Back at Sakura Technologies' 47th floor office, Amara reviewed international contracts with a new team of young, diverse professionals, all empowered by the Miguel Okafor Fund. Her assistant approached. Amara, there's someone here requesting a meeting, Veronica Hale. Amara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Send her in. Veronica entered, no longer the ruthless CEO, but a humbled professional seeking guidance. Together, they reviewed contracts, cross-cultural correspondence, and business etiquette protocols. Veronica learned not just the art of translation, but the value of mentorship, humility, and respect. Amara called her mother at home. Lila answered, radiant and healthy. Amara, you've received more opportunities today. Amara chuckled softly. Yes, mother. But the most important victory is honoring my father and ensuring that his work, and my work, creates opportunities for others, no matter their background. 6 months later, the Miguel Okafor Fund had already funded scholarships for 15 students, expanded mentorship programs, and established internships in international relations and translation. Amara's story became a beacon of hope, a testament that talent, perseverance, and integrity can overcome prejudice and privilege. Veronica, now part of Amara's team, learned daily the lessons she had ignored for decades. That leadership requires vision and humility, and that the most impactful decisions honor both people and process. Amara's legacy had begun, not as a delivery girl, but as a force that transformed corporate culture, saved lives, and proved that true intelligence shines brightest when forged under necessity and tested in adversity.